Monday, April 29th, 2:05 p.m. Central Daylight Standard Time, 2024. You know, there won't be but one sharpshooter probably ever in the world. Me. You know, me as a person. Now, I'm going to talk to you here about what I think should happen. You know, this garbage with Trump. If anything at all has resulted out of this, in my opinion, they might as well just stop this stuff with Trump. But, my personal opinion, I think what's happened here is a weakness with our Constitution, and our judicial system has been exposed. Therefore, we need a constitutional amendment. We need some changes to our Constitution. Now, what would I think would be fair and smart to do? Number one, all civil officers, I guess that's what the president is. That's what a justice on the Supreme Court is too. Civil officers, I think, is the way they're described in the Constitution, that are subjected to impeachment. Those kinds of people, while sitting in office, the Constitution don't need to change on that except for one thing. The Senate can only convict and remove from office. All right? So anytime a civil officer sitting in office is convicted and removed from office, all formal civil officers are not subjected to the civilian justice system per se, like what we've seen with Trump. Instead, the House must impeach, the Senate must try, the Senate must find guilty. Okay? So what should happen after that? Remember, the Senate doesn't get to impose punishment. Okay? Let me turn this camera off. All right, camera back on. So the Senate can only convict. And they would need the required number per the Constitution to convict. But they can't sentence. So what should happen? We should create a civil officer sentencing tribunal system. Put it in the Constitution. What would this consist of? 7 federal judges selected. They can be current or retired as long as they're of sound-minded body and they served honorably. A panel of 7 federal judges. A majority, 4 of those judges must be judges that were picked by presidents of the party of the person, the defendant, the person convicted. 4. The other 3 can be the other party. Whatever these federal judges decide for punishment stands. If they decide no punishment is needed, that stands. Unreviewable by the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court members, Supreme Court retired members would not be eligible to be a federal judge on this civil officer sentencing tribunal. The House of Representatives on a former civil officer trying to impeach, statute of limitations at the time the impeachment starts must apply. Okay. That's what we need in our Constitution. Now, remember this, and this is something that I don't think many people have thought about. President Kennedy was assassinated. He was young when he was sworn in. What I mean by this, presidents were living longer. Think about it. We could have a president sworn in at 35 years of age. He could live to be 100, huh? 65 years. So, yes, former justices on the Supreme Court, if they break the law, it's up to the House of Representatives to impeach them after they're off the bench. If the House won't impeach them, so be it. It's not up to the Senate, it's up to the House. If the House impeaches them, the Senate holds a trial to either find guilty or not guilty. If guilty, they go to the tribunal. All right? The only thing I would say about the federal judges that are picked, they don't need to be from the same districts they represented or sat on the bench. They should be from different districts. All right? Whatever they decide for a sentence, that's all they're doing. They're either going to not give a sentence or they're going to give a sentence. Whatever they give stands. Not appealable back to the Supreme Court or any other court. It stands. But remember, 4 of those members will be federal judges appointed by the defendant's own party. It could even be a federal judge that this defendant put on the bench. His party. That's what we need. We can't have all of these DAs and all of these attorney generals in all of these states playing this bullshit, okay? Let the House and the Senate, that's the body. The Founding Fathers wanted that body to convict or try and impeach. What this does is this keeps you from trying Joe Biden in the reddish state, reddish district, and this keeps you from trying someone like Donald Trump in New York City, in the bluest of blue. You see, the House is not as red or blue as New York City. You know, it's not as, neither is the state of Montana. So this would be a way, and remember, you're putting 4 of the federal judges on this tribunal, sentencing tribunal, that are of the defendant's own party. If the majority on that court, that's all it takes is a majority for a guilty verdict. A majority. Which means at least one of the people that would vote to sentence. You know, they do the sentencing. At least 4 of the members on that court have to agree to the sentence that's given. Now, there may be more. But remember, it would be at least one member that was chosen by that person's party. This would also apply to a Chief Justice or a Supreme Court Justice that was prosecuted after the fact. If they're put on the bench, for example, by Obama, that means this tribunal would consist of 4 judges who were put on the bench by Democrat presidents. So we're erring on the side of giving these people the benefit of the doubt. You see what I'm saying? It's going to take at least one member who was put on the bench by the same party to render a sentence. You may see more closer to a majority though, but if it's only 3 or less and they can't come to an agreement that a sentence should be administered, game, set, match, it's over. They ain't going to do no jail time, prison time, or pay a fine, whatever this tribunal comes up with. But that's what we need in this country. This keeps it out of the Supreme Court's hands. The Founding Fathers didn't want the Supreme Court playing with this. Notice? These civil officers, we call them, I guess, like the president, they didn't want the Supreme Court playing with them. And by the way, you wouldn't want a former Supreme Court justice who comes off the bench who commits a crime. Well, you wouldn't want him in front of the Supreme Court. You wouldn't want his case in front of the Supreme Court, would you? That would be a conflict in itself, wouldn't it? A conflict. You see what I mean? If you put this in the civilian court system, it's open. You're opened up for appeal. The way I'm wanting to do it, there is no appeal. If 4 members on that court come up with a punishment and they can agree on it, a fine, whatever, that's the end of the ball game. And the defendant that's been convicted will do as they're told, what they're told by this tribunal. That tries to get rid of the bias, keeps the Supreme Court out of it. Supreme Court justices, former justices that would break the law could be tried under this process. Okay? But again, whatever party puts them on the bench will drive 4 of those federal judges on who they can be. You see, I'm a solutions person. And that's what this whole process with Trump, the Constitution is not real cut and dried on this. Oh, well, we can't impeach our president that's out of office because the Constitution says, oh, all the Senate can do is remove him from office. Well, they can clean the word up on that too with an amendment. This is going to apply to all Democrat, Republican, Supreme Court justice members, Democrat and Republican presidents. The only thing you would have to consider with my idea is what if we get a new party? Maybe the wording would need to be, you have to be careful with the wording. If you had a new party, if you had a new party show up and the person got elected and served, then who would be sitting on this tribunal? You know, you're not going to find, for example, let's just say we come up with a party called Dracula. That's the name of it. Well, if they got elected in 4 years, you know, you're not going to have any federal judges that were put on the bench by a president who was a member of the Dracula party. I'm just using that as an example. But that's what should happen. Chief Roberts, that's what he should have did when it came with this clown show last week. I can't believe they heard that case. I can't believe they heard it with this immunity. Because you can't, you know, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, okay? That's what they're trying to do. You can't skin this cat right. There's going to be too many conditions. And all it will do is set up arguments, political arguments, time after time after time. And that wastes time. Well, anyway, that's going to conclude the video.